Welcome to the Old Capital Real Estate Investing Podcast with Michael Becker and Paul Peebles. During this program, you will hear interviews with real-life successful investors who will share their stories and provide useful advice on how to acquire, finance, and operate apartment complexes. Now, here they are, Michael Becker and Paul Peebles.
Welcome to the Old Capital Real Estate Investing Podcast. I'm your host, Paul Peebles, National Underwriter for Old Capital. Typically would be Mr. Michael Becker sitting in with us at the podcast, but he is on another due diligence assignment. So sitting in, the professor himself, Mr. James Eng. James, how are you?
Great. Thanks for having me, Paul.
So this is kind of a special podcast, and it's a special podcast because we want you to be part of a philanthropic event here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And we brought in a special guest to be with us. But before we introduce her, I want to have James kind of explain a little bit about what this special event is and how you can participate in this event.
So Saturday, March 30th, here in Dallas at SMU, we're having a 3-on-3 half-court basketball tournament. And there's a couple ways that you can participate. Number one is as a sponsor of the event. Number two, register a team. Or three, as an individual, you can register as well. And all the proceeds are going to benefit City House. And so we brought in Karen Voker with City House, and we wanted to talk to her and find out a little bit more about what City House does. So
before we spend some time with Karen, I just want to give you kind of a background. We do so much investing in multifamily, but investing in multifamily is one part of investing for you, but also too, we've got to remember that what we're investing in is families, and some of these properties have families that are sometimes economically challenged. And we want to talk a little bit about how we can help, how you can help, how the community can help to support homelessness in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And so, just like James says, we brought in Karen Voker. Karen is with City House. City House is a nonprofit and making sure people are not homeless. So Karen, thanks for joining us in the Old Capital Podcast. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you so much for having me today.
No problem. So James, I'm going to kick it over to you.
Sure, Karen. So maybe to start, how did you first get involved with City House?
I first got involved at the very beginning. City House was started by two Plano ISD school teachers who saw kids coming to school with all their worldly belongings in a hefty bag, stuffing that hefty bag into the lockers, showering in gym class, indications that they were not living at home. And they wanted to provide a safe place for these kids to stay overnight so they wouldn't drop out of school or get into drugs on the streets or things like that. It was a novel idea in Plano back in 1987. And at that time, the political mood was to focus on our all-American city. So we would get the corporations that now are housed all along the Legacy Park area. So they reached out to different service organizations to try and get a group of people together to form a task force to investigate the possibility of opening a children's shelter, which has to be licensed by the state of Texas. And I was the representative of the Junior League of Collin County on that task force that rolled over to become the founding board of directors.
So that was 30 years ago.
Yes.
And so now maybe bring us up to speed on what the City House currently provide.
City House currently provides what we've always provided, emergency shelter for children who are victims of abuse, neglect, or homelessness. We have grown from our first shelter was a 6-bed shelter opened in 1988 for boys and girls ages 10 to 17. In the state of Texas, shelters for children are based on age. There's one kind of license for 10 to 17. There's another kind of license for birth through 9. And then once you're 18 in the state of Texas, you're considered an adult, so not eligible for placement or child protective services or family assistance. So originally it was sort of a teenage issue, what we saw in 1988. Kids weren't getting along with their parents, or they were running away, or things like that. So we opened a 6-bed shelter, and we were full in 2 days. And the reality is we turned away about 2 or 3 times as many children as we could see. So in the early 90s, we moved into a larger location and went from 6 beds to 15 beds. Again, in the teen shelter mode, right. 10 to 17-year-olds. More and more, the kids placed there were either placed there by Child Protective Services, or they were community kids who were referred by school counselors, neighbors, faith-based organizations and the like. And they were able to stay at our shelter up to 90 days and then hopefully transition either back to their homes or to a foster family or a relative or something along those lines. So that was how we operated for some first 15 years. And what we saw happening are the children who were placed there by Child Protective Services many times never went on to a more permanent placement. They'd kind of go from shelter to shelter or foster family, all throughout the state of Texas. And when they turned 18, their CPS case manager would come to them wherever they were and say, pack your bags, where do you want to go? Well, obviously, if they had a place to be, they would have been there by now. So what we saw were some of the kids in our teen shelter, as their 18th birthday loomed, were showing signs of anxiety. Right. You know, I remember one little girl broke out in hives all over her neck and chest area. Boys had kind of panic attacks, things like that. And we realized that we were rendering these kids homeless. So the first extension of our teen shelter program was a transitional living program for 18 to 23-year-olds that is very heavy on life skills and on scholarship opportunities. And it's a residential, so they have group homes. And that was the transitional living program. So time marches on. And about 10 years ago or 15 years ago, we got more and more requests for younger children. If you had told me when we first opened that 6-bed shelter for teens in 1988 that someday we'd need a shelter for babies, I would have said you were crazy. But sadly, that's the way things have gone. So we started making plans to open a children's shelter that opened in 2009. It's called My Friend's House, and it shelters children newborn through age 17. It's located in Plano, but we are the only children's shelter in Collin County. We were when we started in 1988. We continue to be the only children's shelter in Collin County. And I think it's because it's a very expensive proposition. You're licensed by the state. There's certain requirements that go on, you know, staffing requirements and medical and dental assistance and things like that. So it's a very expensive operation. And I think that's why we still remain the only children's shelter.
So maybe walk us through the process of if somebody comes into City House, what do you guys do? How do you, I mean, whether the person's
kids come
11
at all hours,
or 5
all
or
hours of the day and night. And they come sometimes by themselves because they've heard of us, or they're placed there by Child Protective Services. And we have to immediately react to whatever that child's immediate needs are. Many times it's medical attention. Always it's counseling. Usually they just come with the clothes on their back. So when a new resident comes to My Friend's House, our children's shelter, they are given a week's worth of new clothing that they take with them when they move on. They're given medical assistance. In some cases, they've been hurt or injured because of domestic violence issues at home. And we give them food, the basic things: food, clothing, shelter, transportation to and from school, counseling, case management, and recreational activities.
Who pays for all this?
You know how you do annual reports and you have a big pie and there's X amount of the pie is this, X amount of the pie is that. We do get some federal and state grants. They're based on homeless and runaway youth awards. And we do get some corporate grants, but the biggest part of our pie are individual donors. And that's the way it's been really for the entire 30 years. We write for grants, we get different grants and things like that, but still in all, the biggest portion of the pie are individual donors.
So we're putting on this tournament in March to really raise awareness in our community about what you guys are doing. And so we appreciate how much you guys are doing. So how can people, whether they're local in DFW or we have listeners all over the world, but a lot in, you know, California and New York and things like that, how can they find out more about what you guys are doing? And I would love, I know you guys have a couple of videos also that you've put together. Maybe tell us how people can find out more. And then if you have one or two stories, maybe about, I think you had a video, just to prompt you, you had a video about one of the people who sort of went through City House, and maybe share his story briefly as well.
Sure. We're very excited about Hoops for Homelessness. Thank you so much for everybody who's involved in whatever community that they live, the population is continually growing, which is a good thing. But along with the increase in population is an increase in overall homelessness. Here in Collin County, every January, there's a homelessness count where volunteers and professionals go out literally one night and speak to find people on the street and literally count the number of homeless. Last year in 2018, 35% of the overall homeless were kids, children, either with parents or unaccompanied children. So this kind of thing kind of goes on in all developing communities in California, in New York, or in between. So one would want to reach out and find out what kind of services are available for really the innocent victims of homelessness or the innocent victims of domestic violence and the other things that drive children into bad situations. And our mission has been from the beginning to provide, the confidence and skills kids need to cope with difficult situations and relationships. And so that's why we started, and that's what we strive to continue to do. We've just spread out the age differences from birth to 23 instead of 10 to 17. We have 5 different programs within City House that address these different issues. My Friend's House is our children's shelter. Our Transitional Living program has 3 residential homes that house kids who've aged out of Child Protective Services, that 18 to 23 age group. And that's a program that lasts 18 months to 2 years. We've had tremendous success with that program. I have letters that are sent to us by former residents who write back and say how much our help meant to them. And one of our Transitional Living program graduates last year gained a lot of notoriety. His name is Ron, and he was in our children's shelter, My Friend's House, until he turned 18, and then he went into our Transitional Living program. When he's a very accomplished musician, guitarist, writes his own songs, and sings. And he's always done that at different clubs and places around this area. And 2 years ago, he auditioned for American Idol and won a ticket to Hollywood. So it was all very exciting. And we were supposed to be quiet about it, though, because the show was not coming on till March, and he'd had his ticket for a few months. And what the American Idol people do is have, for everybody who auditions and gets a ticket to Hollywood, they do sort of a hometown story about them. They send out their cameramen and everything. Well, because Ron had come from an abusive home and had been living with us for, 2 or 3 years, they came out to our location and interviewed our executive director and also the Plano ISD school teacher who referred him to us. And Ron went on to Hollywood and became in the top 25 of American Idol before he was exited. Right. But I'm hoping he's really, really a very talented guy, and we bring him out all the time. He comes and performs for us at a lot of events and things like that. And I'm hoping he tries out again for one of those shows because he really is very talented. So that was a little success story that kind of made a lot of the newspapers and a lot of the TV things.
No, that's great.
Yeah.
What's the best place? Maybe give us a website, and then maybe if someone wants to reach out to you directly, what's the best way, either phone or email?
Our website is really pretty informative, and the address is www.cityhouse.org, O-R-G. And there's lots of information and contact phone numbers and emails on the website. I am the community relations manager for City House, and people can call me anytime. Call Karen. I'm at extension 312, or you can email me at cityhouse.org. And what I like to do with people who are new to City House is I could talk from now until next Tuesday, but I like to organize a tour so I can take them and show them, what we're all about, and tour our shelter and get an idea of what their time, efforts, or money are going towards helping.
Right. No, that's great.
So if you were to get $1,000 or $5,000, what would that money be put into?
Well, I think this year it will be, My Friend's House is turning 10 years old. It was built from scratch. It's one of the only shelters in the state of Texas, or even in the entire nation.
So it's not a house, it's a
house.
It's a house.
It was built by home builders, not commercial builders. And it's 10,000 square feet.
Wow.
1 story. It's 24 beds. And It's one of the only shelters in the country that has been built to suit from ground up.
Amazing.
It was built to be child friendly.
Yep.
And it's not institutionalized at all. It's very warm and open, and the kids love it. And it's been around, like I said, for 10 years. Well, when you've had as many kids in and out over those 10 years, my friend's house needs a bit of a facelift. So the monies that you raise will go towards improvements that need to be made.
That's great.
On the property.
James, how big is Collin County? I don't remember.
Number of people or
Number of people. It's a
at
big
least,
county.
At least 1 million. Yeah, close to 1 million in Collin County.
And so half of these marriages end in divorce. Children are displaced. There's some problems with the homes themselves. You need to have some type of a safety net, and you just can't count on the government to do everything for you. You need to have a public/private group, and that's where City House comes in to kind of help people over that hump. And it may not be maybe a week, it may be 18 months, it may be a longer period of time to try to get the ship righted and get things done. And Karen has kind of pulled on our heartstrings and kind of tell us a little bit of the stories, and she's been doing it for 33 years. So it's a journey for you, and I can probably imagine that if we sat here for the next 45 or 50 minutes, you could tell us some great stories, some triumph stories, but I'm sure there's a lot of tragedy stories too, and people need to know some about these tragedies and how we're trying to overcome some of these tragedies.
I think people are always surprised that in Collin County, which is very affluent, that there are problems like these. It's always, abuse is not based on income, though. People always assume it's lower income, and it really is not. It goes kind of throughout the spectrum. Some people just aren't great parents.
Yeah, I get that.
And what we have at our children's shelter are sibling groups. If you're in Child Protective Services and you are removing a child from an abusive or unsafe homes, maybe it's not always one child. It could be a sibling group. And what Child Protective Services, the state does, is either place that child or group of children in a foster family in the area or in a shelter like ours. Number one, we're the only shelter in this area. And number two, how many foster families do you know who could take 3, 4, and 5 kids?
Yep.
And once they've been removed from their home, it's usually through a traumatic experience, and then to be separated again from your siblings is even more traumatic for that child. So our population at my friend's house, our children's shelter, has been about 96% large sibling groups.
Super like that name, My Friend's House. I do like that.
Well, the reason that name came up was the then chairman of our board of directors thought it was a nice way for kids at school, if kids were asking you where are you staying or where are you living, rather than say at the shelter, you can say at my friend's house. And that's how it started.
Yeah. So great information from Karen. So James, what's the ask and what are we trying to do here?
I mean, the ask really is figure out a way to support one way or another. So whether that's donating time, money, registering for the event, sponsoring the event, that is the ask, is that we've been given a lot the past couple of years in multifamily. We've made a lot of money. We've done very well. And I think sometimes everybody is impacted by homelessness in some way or another. And you see it sometimes, but for an organization like City House, we're really trying to just sort of leverage and give them the support that they need. And I think just if I'm going to tug a little bit more on your heartstrings, actually when I was in Chicago, when I walked to work every day at Bank of America, there would be homeless people on the street in Chicago. And that was sort of Monday through Friday. And there's so many sometimes that you just ignore them. And not until I was I think it was family or friends were in town, and we started walking along Michigan Avenue on a Saturday. And this was not a typical route that I would walk. And I saw the same homeless guy that I saw earlier in the week at a different spot. And it's that reality that it's the same guys, the same people. And a lot of times they just need a place just to get their bearings and build a foundation from. And once they're able to do that, they become part of everybody else, and they are a productive member of society. So I think City House has started with a niche and started with an age group, but then also expanded and grown. And that's really what we want to help them with and continue to grow their mission.
So how could we help them? Again, tell us one more time about Hoops for Homelessness. Who are we looking for and how much money are we trying to raise?
So the event's Saturday, March 30th here in Dallas. You can register a team, that's $300. Individual registration is $100, and you can sponsor. We have sponsorship opportunities from $5,000 to $2,500 to $1,000, and then all the money is going to go to City House. So we're going to put on the event, and then all the money we'll put together a big check, and all the money we raise will go to City House on that day.
So we already have a number of teams that have already committed to come in. We already have a bunch of sponsors. We're looking for your help. We need for you to help us participate and become that safety net. Just like James says, we've made some money in the multifamily business. We've helped a lot of people out. We've helped a lot of tenants out. We've made a better place for them to live. This is something that you could donate your time or donate some of your money to Hoops for Homelessness. Again, where's the location at and how can people get signed up?
So it's Saturday, March 30th. It's going to be 8 a.m. to noon on the SMU campus over at Dedman. And I think we'll also probably push out a list. You can either donate money, and then you guys also have a list of items that potentially people could bring in. And so that might be a way, if maybe some of the stuff you already have in your own house, and then come on out to the event, support a team, and I think it'll be a great time.
Yeah, this is boys and girls can play basketball 3-on-3. This is something that goes on with large cities that we've seen. We think this is a great opportunity if you are an investor that want to get to know some of the other investors and some of the other commercial realtors or the other attorneys or the self-directed IRA folks. We all come together and we all try to raise money for this cause. We looked at a lot of other causes out there, but this one has kind of direct parallels with what we do. We try to help people improve their lives with multifamily, and we're trying to help these sometimes unfortunately lost folks that don't have a safety net by creating a safety net. So, Karen, thank you for doing your work for the last 33 years. Unbelievable. Anything you want to leave with us before we forget?
Well, I just want, for all those of you who are going to be going to the event on March 30th, imagine that you have 4 houses, that you live in 4 houses. The things that you go through on a regular basis at one house, we have 4. And they're all for kids and young adults, kids, teens, and young adults. So the things you go through the most in your own house, laundry detergent, cleaning products, toilet paper, Kleenex, paper products, are the things we go through times 4. So if you're coming out and want to help, you could bring something like that, just things you use around your own home, or you could bring gift cards. Gift cards are tremendously helpful to us because, as I said, many times the kids come in the middle of the night and our staff can take a Walmart gift card pretty much 24/7 and go immediately respond to whatever that new resident's needs are. Sometimes it's medicine, sometimes it's clothing, sometimes it's school supplies. But gift cards, generic kind of gift cards, Target, Walmart, Visa, MasterCard are great. They're easily stored in a file drawer and can be used, as I said, to immediately respond to a child's needs. Rather than, you can't take a traumatized child in the middle of the night across town to some storage unit and say, let's dig around and see if we can find something that'll fit you. So this is why we encourage donations of gift cards. They're very practical.
That's great. Thanks for bringing this to our attention, Karen. We appreciate your time. That hopefully we'll see you out there.
Yes, you will.
On March 30th. James, anything more to add?
No, that's it. Thank you guys very much.
So remember to sign up on the Old Capital Podcast website. Make sure you go to that. And we look forward to playing basketball. I'm playing. I want to see you play. Come out and join us. Again, I'm Paul Peebles. Have a great day.
Thanks for listening to the Old Capital Real Estate Investing Podcast. Please join us at oldcapitalpodcast.com to sign up for our weekly email updates. We'll see you next week for another great interview.